Good morning to today's training looking at versions of the Cattaraugus County Health Department's request for analysis application and the Cattaraugus County Health Department's chain of custody application. As you are aware, the request for analysis um, application is done for sort of one-off samples, often for homeowners and that sort of thing, and real property transfers. Whereas the COC tends to be used for facilities and systems that do sampling on a regular basis. Um, and we need to be a little bit more careful about those regulated facilities. So, as you are all aware, the system was developed, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago by me, Chris Crawford. And if you remember, if some of you were around and you remember, it was a rush job. The lab was looking to reopen. They needed some software to do this. I was given that task of building these applications. And, in retrospect, I did the best I could, but it could have been better. And I'm glad I've had the opportunity to do this. Improvement on this system, I think I've stabilized it quite a bit. I've talked to a lot of you with regards to making improvements, some of the workarounds that you've developed, and try to ensure that you won't need those workarounds anymore and what have you. So I think what the new system is from a coding standpoint much more, I don't know, maybe the best word is stable. I've taken a lot into consideration with how you guys have been using the system over the past 8 or 9 years, um, and tried to address some of those issues and just other good coding practices that I've picked up over the years. So let's go ahead and get started here. And the first thing I want to show you is the entire system from this point forward is going to be stored in a folder called lab software. You see it here. It's currently sitting on my computer, this PC documents lab software. But if you and most of you watching this video will never do this, and you shouldn't do this. But if you needed to move the system, so let's say it's sitting on the V drive, right, as opposed to my computer, you would simply take the entire folder and move it to wherever you wanted to move it. That was one of the issues with the program beforehand. Is a lot of the path names were, for lack of a better term, hard coded, right? They're not anymore. They are soft coded and they follow a path to this lab software folder. So everything before the lab software folder, we get that information when the application starts, right? So this lab software folder can be sitting everywhere. And you can see if we look in here now, um, the two databases are in the lab software folder. There's a folder called RFAs. This is where sanitarians submit things. They're going to go to this folder. The results are going to go to this folder, as well as um, our SD Olean folder, um, server, I should say. And then similarly, PWS COCs will go here, and their path names for their results are stored in the COC references folder, um, and essentially they're adjusted and updated here. But long story short is by putting everything in one folder, and if we decide to move things around, they're all in the same place. We can move the entire folder. and shouldn't run into breaking path names. Okay, so I think that was a major improvement actually, and I'm glad I went through and scripted that out. So you got the databases in here. I have a script here that backs up and copies those databases, and those will go in this backups folder. We'll set this to run every night. Um, uh, there's always going to be a copy of the COC in the RFA, um, just so we have a copy in case somehow things get deleted. And there will always be a copy for the references for the COC in the RFA. I am not in this video going to show you how to access these reference folders. That's only for application administrators. What I will tell you is currently the old version of this, all of this reference data was stored in each of the workbooks, right? So when you created a workbook, the reference data was in there. And you guys might recall that you saw tabs like inventory and other things that seem to store reference data. That wasn't a good way to do it, so I fixed that. And instead, what happens is all of that reference data is stored in these reference workbooks. Okay, and that reference data can be updated if need be, and the systems administrators will get some training on how to update that reference data. But for this video, we're not going to talk about that too much. So let's go ahead and get started. I think we're going to start with the RFA first, and then we'll move on to the COC. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the new RFA. So the thought is, before we open this, the thought is, yes, all of this will be sitting here in this lab software folder somewhere on the V drive, but you will have a shortcut on your desktop to both the RFA and the COC. So you'll have a little shortcut. You'll click on those, and we'll start with the RFA, and we'll show you what we got here. So here we go. We open up the RFA. It does some thinking. It sets things up. Okay. First thing to notice here, this is read only. Okay, now why is that, right? So it's read only because one, now all the reference data for the drop downs and everything, and actually what you didn't see is because it's hidden, but when we opened up this, we also opened up the reference data workbook, okay? But you didn't see that. But it is open in the background, it's hidden, and it feeds these drop-down menus, okay? And it also allows you, which we'll look at in a minute, it'll also allow you to choose a profile for an RFA. And we're actually going to use that function because it saves us some time. Anyway, this is read only. So you will never be saving anything to this file. You won't. Okay. But you can use this file and then save what you do, and you're familiar with this based on how you use the current system, as a different file name. Okay. So because it's read only, it allows multiple users to use this thing at the same time. Now, I did test this, but there's one little potential tiny hiccup in this, and I'll explain it to you in a minute. So let's go ahead and choose our profile. Now, what's a profile? So in talking to Rich Dayton, he said a lot of you guys, you staff members, you pre-fill these things for clients that you use most often, and then you reopen them. Well, that's not going to work anymore because we're working off of a master document that's read only. So you can't save a version of this and reuse it. It's read only. But what you can do, so Rich said, Rich came up with the idea of creating profiles. So what you can do, and you can work with Rich to do this, is you can create a profile. Okay. So let's say you're commonly doing samples at some place. I don't know where. And frankly, even if you just want to create a profile that provides limited automatic entry, you can do that too. Like just your name and the water type and preferred reporting method. The profile allows you to create um, standard answers or standard entries for all of these boxes here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So and we can always add profiles. It's not a big deal. Rich knows how to do that. It's the profiles are stored in the RFA references workbook, which is open in the background right now. So, um, I was testing this out. I put, I don't know, what did I put in here? 17 different profiles or what have you. Only two of them did I bother populating. All the rest are blanks. I only populated 1 and 3. So we're going to go ahead and choose 3. Oh, so there you go. As soon as I chose profile 3, all the answers came up. All the data came up here. Okay. So, for the most part, you're not going to create a profile that has every single bit of information, but you may create a profile that fills out, I don't know, 75% of this thing. For something that you do on a fairly regular basis. But, I'm testing things out and I wanted things to be quick. So I filled out everything here in profile 3. I chose profile 3. And sure enough, there you go. There's everything that pops up. Okay. And it's all just dummy data, right? Um, just because you enter a profile, it doesn't mean you can't adjust these things. Okay. You can. And we're going to adjust a couple of them because I want to show you a couple other things. So, first of all, street names. Okay, so when I click on street name, I get forget this text here. Don't worry about that. But I get a drop down of all the street names in Cattaraugus County, plus any street names that may have been entered by you guys. Now, right now, there's not many of those. There's just the ones that I've been using for test purposes. Um, but let's say, so we can choose, right? So let's, I know this exists. We're going to go to Zolko Road. There it is. So we could choose Zolko Road. There it is. We can do that. Or unfortunately, we kind of have to click out and click back in. Or we can enter a name that might not be in the list. So I don't know. I'm going to think of something crazy, right? Like Saddam Hussein. Some of you may know who that was. Way, right? Okay, now did you see there for a second? So Saddam Hussein way goes in. Did you see here how things? We got a little. My pointer turned into a wheel, suggesting that something was going on. Right, the computer was thinking there. So what happened there? So what happened there is it allowed Saddam Hussein way, which is good. But it also added Saddam Hussein way to our list of street names. And so you didn't see it, but what ended up happening is it took this value, Saddam Hussein way, and it added it to the RFA references workbook. It added it to the list of streets. So if you were to come back next time, do this again, and you needed Saddam Hussein way, and I'll show you this in a second, it'll be there. And you can choose Saddam Hussein way. Um, the same thing applies for zip codes. Okay. And you can, again, here's a list of zip codes. You could type in, I don't know, Akron, New York, right? You can choose that. But if there was a zip code there that that didn't appear, you could add it the same way you did with the street. Okay, and you'd see the same thing. The computer would think, and it would add it to the list of zip codes. Now, just so you're aware, over here, the on this side, the physical address, it's only Pennsylvania and New York zip codes. Over here, it's all zip codes. Okay, in the United States. So some of you asked for Canada zip codes. You can add those, right? You can if you have your Canadian zip code. Now, you know, initially I tried to enter in all of the Canadian zip codes. Canada has an inordinate amount of zip codes, more than you can imagine. I did find a list, and Canada has something like, I don't know, 20 times more zip codes than the US, which, why, I can't tell you, but they do. Um, and when I tried to add that list, it was so many, it just slowed things down. And so I figured the best way to handle this is you can add your Canadian zip codes here. Okay, so if you have a Canadian zip code, go ahead and enter it. But just like I showed you with the streets, with Saddam Hussein, so you'd enter in your Canadian zip code here, just like you would with the street. Um, but it has to be entered in this format, right? The name of the Canadian zip code, a pipe character, that's called a pipe character. Um, the two character abbreviation, and then the six, the three space three or six character Canadian zip code. Okay. It has to be entered that way. If it's not entered that way, if I recall correctly, you will be told that you'll click it and it'll say, oh, you didn't do it right. And you'll need to do it again. So that's just a feature I wanted to show you. So let's go just for kicks and see if Saddam Hussein Way is now in our list. So let's go over here and let's type in Saddam. Oh, there it is. There's Saddam Hussein Way. So it did it. It did what we needed it to do. And so there you go. Everything else here is pretty self-explanatory. It's stuff that you guys have done before. I tried to make it a little prettier, right? You'll notice there's no calculation cells down here. Instead, there's a button called Fill in a Request for Analysis Form, which we're gonna hit here in a minute. But I just want to show you, um, just scroll through the form here. Nothing is really new in terms of what you're gonna enter. It just looks a little prettier, um, and it's nice. It's nicer. The functionality that I showed you with the zip codes and the street names, that's kind of new, so that's valuable. All right, so now if you recall in the old form, there were calculation cells down here. Those are gone. Again, those should have never been there, but it was a rush job at the time, and instead we have this button called Fill in Request for Analysis Form. And we're going to go ahead and click that button. So what does that do? For whatever reason, you got to sometimes click these things twice. Oh, come on. Now you're going to break on me. H29. Bear with me a minute. I'm hoping I can just fix this quickly. Aha! It's missing a zip code. All right, let me get out of this for a second, and let me just put a zip code in there. And reset. All right, let's see if this works now. I'm gonna have to fiddle with that. I apologize. I'm hoping this will work now so I don't have to restart this video. It did. Okay, I'm gonna fix that little error. You guys didn't see it, but I was looking at my other screen and looking at the code and seeing what the issue was. It's not a big error, but I'll need to fix it. Anyway, what happens when you click the fill in the request for analysis form? You can see this form is now on its own separate tab, right? It's not in the data input tab. It's got its own tab, and it just fills all of that in, right? And you guys should be familiar with that. There's nothing really new under the sun there. Do not fiddle with this. All right. If you need to make changes, make the changes on the data input uh, tab and hit fill in request again. Okay. Don't make the changes here. All right. This is just here to allow you to print it, take one final look at it before you hit the submit request for analysis form to the CCHD. Okay. I should probably put CCHD lab, but that's all right. Anyway, so now we have this. So this is good. See, this is RFA read only. Now, as soon as I click this button, it's going to go. Okay. Now, a couple of thoughts before I click this button. Excel has a 218 character limit to path/file names. That means that if there's more than 218 characters in both the path to the file and the file name, Excel doesn't like that. Okay, and because I know that, I have built things into the system here that essentially don't allow you to do that, right? And so you'll get pop-ups that say things like reduce the client name by X number of characters, or reduce the location of the sample by X number of characters. Okay. So you would go back and you would, reduce your client name. You would reduce your sampling point name, right? Um, it simply doesn't like it. And there's nothing I can do about it. I've tried to build ways to let you know that things are getting long. Um, that's all I can do. So be aware of that, right? And make sure that you try to keep the location of the test points and the client names relatively short. Okay. Um, like I said, you'll be notified if they're too long, but try to keep them short. I'll save you a little time. What else do I want to tell you about? Talk to the lab a little bit, and they said, well, if um, a sanitarian collects a sample at the same site on the same day, let's say they collect a nitrate and a bacteriological sample. Whatever they collect second will overwrite the first one once they hit the submit button. And unfortunately, that was true. So, folks in the lab have been dealing with that. They had a little workaround that they did to handle that. But I built into this now where, because how the path name is when you hit the submit button is it takes the client name, it takes the location name, and it takes the date. So if you collect two samples on the same date in the same location, same sample point, same date, same location, same client, in the past it would overwrite. Now it doesn't do that. Now it says, oh, we already have that file. You need to rename, it'll you need to give it a different location name or give it a different client name. Okay. So my advice to you on that would be just change the location name. Now, you're saying, well, but I'm collecting it at the same location. No, you just call it, leave the location name and just put dash sample 2 or number 2 or whatever, right? You just got to change that location name a little bit. And that's all the lab has been doing to handle that. But now the lab's not going to do it. You're going to get a pop-up box that's going to tell you, oh, you need to do this. And the sanitarians will be doing that, which actually makes sense. So the sanitarians know what one is what. So that's how we're handling that now. So you got the path name issue, you got the overwrite issue with the same sample, the same location, and the same date. Those have been handled. So now we're going to go ahead and say submit request for analysis to lab. Now, when I do this, it's going to do it, and then it's going to close Excel. So let's do it. It says, okay, it was delivered to the lab. Notice this is still read only. And we're going to say, okay. And it closes. And we're done, right? So we did what we needed to do. If you needed to do another sample, right, you would simply have to reopen that RFA again. Okay, now I tried to think about, oh, maybe I want to leave the RFA thing open and they can go back. Long story short, I thought about that a little bit and I thought, no, it's just a better idea to close it up. It doesn't take folks long to, go to their desktop and reopen the RFA. It's not a big deal. So that's what we're going to do. And there were some issues, some data integrity issues involved that I should handle, that get better handled by just closing down the RFA. All right, so what did we create? So we created this guy here. And you can see, there's the sanitarian, the client, the location point, and the date. You guys are familiar with that. And we'll open it up. And now what you see is it goes immediately to the lab tab, okay? Because sanitarians are done, right? And from this point on, it's just laboratory stuff. So it goes to the lab tab. But before we enter things in here, let's just take a look at what happens at the RFA tab. Oh, you can no longer submit this, right? That's grayed out. You're done. You submitted, you're done. Now you can print it if you want, but you can't submit it. It has already been submitted. That's grayed out. And if you try to change any of this, shoot, this should have been locked. All right, I'll have to look at this. Oh, no, they are locked. Because when I start typing, there you go. Okay. Pardon me, brain fart there. It's locked. You can't change this information anymore. So once it's submitted, you're done. It's now to the lab. None of this information can be changed. Like I said, you can print it here. Similarly with data input, I can't change any of that. Okay, so that's done too. So because those are all done, it automatically opens up to the lab input tab. And so now I'm in the lab, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, enter lab ID 1245, whatever. Chlorine check, yes. We'll enter a temperature 4.6 degrees Celsius, acceptable condition, yes. We'll throw in a reception time, who received it. We'll give it a beginning timestamp, who analyzed it. It's verified by somebody else, reported by somebody else. End it, report it, give it a result. And then we're just going to put test in the comments. Now, before I click the deliver sample results to clients, one of the things I did do in both this and the COC is I tried to automate things a little bit more. And what I mean by automate, if something, and you'll see this more in the COC, but if you select certain values, other values auto-populate. So people don't have to do that kind of stuff. don't have to fill these things. So for instance, when we opened this up, you saw the units were already here in the approved method, right? And that was because of the test type that was chosen. So you chose a simple, a particular test type, you get the approved method that's used, and you get the units. And you'll see more of that in COC, but um, that's the idea, right? So, all right, so now we're going to go ahead. We've done all of this. We're going to deliver our sample results uh, to the client. So let's go ahead and do that. You always got to hit this twice, and I don't know why. I'm going to try to get rid of this little pop-up box, but just say okay. It's not a big deal. And it's going to go, and you see it thinking, right? And this actually takes a second or two. And you just send it to the Peacewig. Here's your result here, right? And it's been delivered to the client, okay? And it's been delivered to sanitary and financial staff, okay? Again, you gotta click on, again, I'm gonna try to get rid of these, but we're gonna say okay. And again, don't worry about saying okay. And we're good, right? So the result has been delivered. So let's go see that. Okay, and here is the result. There it is. And we'll open up here's the PDF. I'm not going to open it up. Trust me, it's fine. It also went to SDOlean 2 and our Peacewig stuff. I'm going to try to get Peacewig in a different form back up and running. So I'm glad it's still sending it there. But it sends the result there, but it also sends it here. And again, see, we're in the lab software folder, right? Everything's in the lab software folder. Okay, so the result is done. It's been sent to the client. We're good, right? Now, some of you have asked for not automatically sending things to the client. So you can do that now. You get a none for your delivery method. And if I recall correctly, if you select none, it does everything that I just showed you, except the email doesn't go, right? So you'll still get a PDF, right? So you're doing your real property transfer. You know, the PDF is here, it is, the results here. But that result does not get sent to the client, right? It just gets here, and you now, as the sanitarian, know where it is. You can do with it what you want. So there it is. All right, so let's go ahead and open this. We're going to go through the last step that might occur, and that's updating things. So now here's our result. All right, and um, you'll notice the deliver sample results is grayed out. We've already done it once. We can't do it again. Just like the buttons on RFA and data input. Okay, but we can revise the data. Okay, we can do that. So is this a revised result? Yes. We're going to give it a timestamp. We're going to say who it was revised by. We'll change it up here just for kicks. And we can hit this. Now, currently, and I was trying to figure out how to do this, and then I realized, I can't imagine this happens that often. I'm not sure it's worth doing. Currently, you can really only revise this thing once. I mean, you could do it more than once, but you'd have to sort of do it kind of manually. I'm assuming that the chances that we ever revise a sample result twice or more is almost never. So um, currently the program really only handles revising once. So lab staff, be aware of that. If you guys do end up doing a lot of revisions, let me know. I think I can build something, but I can't imagine you do that very often, if ever, actually. All right, so we're going to go ahead and update the sample results and deliver to client. Again, you got to click these things twice. Don't worry about that. I gotta fix that. That shouldn't have happened. And it goes ahead, creates the PDF. There it is. It's been sent to the client. Okay, as soon as you click that again, always click OK when you see this one. Be careful. Don't worry about that. I'm going to try to get rid of that so you don't see it. And you can see here's the revised result. Okay, and here's the revised result workbook. All right. So those are there, and you can bring those up. All right. I am going to stop this now. I've shown you the RFA one. We're going to move on to the COC. But I think this is a good place to stop. So I'm going to do that. Just got to find out where to do that. Oh, there it is. All right. The next one will be on the COC. Thank you.